The Engadget Podcast. So I'm going to try that over again. I'm going to drink a little bit of water. Hang on a second. Technical difficulties. That sounded horrible. The Engadget Podcast is brought to you by Chevrolet, dedicated to pushing the boundaries of automotive innovation to provide cleaner, more efficient, and better connected vehicles to enhance your driving experience. Chevrolet. Find new roads. Thanks for finding roads to the Engadget Podcast, Peter Rojas.
I'm very happy to be back, and we have not been on together in quite a while.
It's been about a month.
About a month,
Sounds about right. Wow. Terrence, thanks for letting you on. This is sort of
Thank
a
you
trial.
for letting me here.
a trial basis.
Allowing me through the door.
If you get one of those technical difficulty signals in the middle of the podcast.
We should have the audience vote minute by minute, and if your
that's
rating
pretty good,
drops
actually.
too far, you're off.
That's a good way. That's a good way to engage people in chat.
Okay.
If
It's like when you watch the presidential debates on CNN, and they have people like turn the knob this way when you're happy, and turn it down when you're unhappy.
We should definitely get
send
those.
knobs out.
Yes.
I say if we get 5 more yes votes than no votes, then you're off the podcast. Does this sound good?
Wait, yes instead over no?
Yeah, yes is Terrence leaves.
Okay, yes, kick me off.
Kick Terrence off.
Okay. No is let Terrence stay.
Keep Terrence around. So there we go. So
You could actually do it with the whole New York staff.
Just
kind of
rotate
like
everybody in?
That's a fair point. Well, not even New York staff. We've
like
got,
a March Madness, you know. I mean, we could do the whole staff.
It's expand. So we've got some British folks, some North Carolinians up there.
Yeah.
Lots of people we could trade in and out of the show. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to try to... There's one of them right now, actually, right on the... Come on in, Matt Smith. We're going to try to keep this a relatively quick show because it's a crazy week. We've got Expand coming up. It actually starts tomorrow, so tomorrow is the press day.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's the first time we're doing that. Going to be some cool product launches. I've seen some stuff this week.
You've seen some stuff?
I've seen some very exciting stuff. I don't know, maybe I've said too much. Some things. I've seen some things this week, so that's going to be exciting. So exciting that we're not going to let you, the viewers, actually attend.
Nope.
Just for people, just
for
accredited
us.
press people. But really excited about the show on Saturday and Sunday here in New York. Tickets are going to be available at the door. I think it's like $30 for the full weekend, which is crazy affordable for a show like this.
Yeah.
What is like a CES badge for those people who actually pay it? It's like at least $1,000, isn't it?
It's expensive. I mean, and general public can't even buy. Like your money's no good, right? Unless you're in the industry.
Your money's always good with us, everybody out there.
We'll take all your money.
We'll take. I mean, I guess we're not set up to take bitcoins, but we'd
we can
figure
out a way.
Yeah. What are you? I mean, we're all going to be on stage. All three of us are going to be on stage at some point during the show. What are you guys most excited about?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I'm helping to judge Insert Coins. I'm actually really excited to see the stage demos from the different companies. I mean, that was one of the best parts I thought of San Francisco is when the companies actually got up on stage.
Sure, once we got through the initial.
Well, you know, I mean, it was like really interesting to see because,
you
know, when you know, we all are like fans of like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and like to actually, you know, see people who are you know, taking risks and like, you know, they poured everything into this project and they get up on stage and like get to talk about it in front of a big audience.
Not only that, but to actually see them in person too, because that's the whole. I mean, that's the downside of Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
That's what I'm saying. It's a very personal. You know, it's like you actually get like to see live. Like
these are real things that exist in the world. So people
it's pretty cool.
You got a couple. You're going to be moderating a couple panels.
Yeah.
Like literally a couple panels.
Yeah, literally two panels. That's a couple.
I got 3.
You got 3? A few.
Yep.
It's not a contest, guys.
No, but I win. I mean, if this were a contest, I would be the
clearly
he
wins this
contest. Are you? So I mean, you got that really cool make one coming up.
Yeah, we're talking to Aya Badir, Mark
Freundfelder,
and
Ben Heck is going to be on there.
We're going to be talking.
Pretty good trio.
Yep, that's going to be really fun. I'm also really excited about the Raspberry Pi make-off thing that we're doing on the floor. We're going to have people actually building projects with the Raspberry Pi live, so you get to kind of see what goes into that. And
so we've got for the first time. I'm saying all these things for the first time as though this weren't just the second ever Expand, but for the first
time ever in the history of Expand.
Literally 1 out of 2 Expands. We're now having this sort of side stage. We're going to be doing cool demos all over. All weekend long,
and we're gonna have a bigger floor show. We're gonna have a lot more companies showing stuff off.
Yeah, I mean, orders. Everything is kind of orders of magnitude larger than it was last time. Last time, I guess, sort of felt like a trial. We kind of, we managed to pull it together, but we pulled it together over the course of something like 3 months.
Yeah.
So bigger show all around. Spike Lee's gonna be there.
Yep.
Enough said, right?
Yeah.
That's worth your $30, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're like the Knicks of technology.
Sure.
I don't know basketball at all. That's a good thing, right?
I don't actually think that is.
Actually, speaking of the Knicks of technology, BlackBerry, the Canucks, the Maple Leafs, the Canadians.
What's a crappy hockey team?
I don't. I don't. I just named 3. Pittsburgh Penguins, probably not.
Let's see. I don't think.
It's probably not safe for me to just start calling hockey teams crappy. I know less about hockey than
I'm going
I
to
do
assume
about
that most of the
basketball.
Canadian hockey teams are pretty good.
Yeah, they're probably full of Canadians after all.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. BlackBerry's relatively good news of the past month has now turned into bad news, and it just keeps piling on. And
dude, when are they going to hit bottom? That's the question.
Is there a bottom?
There's bankruptcy, right?
Yeah,
Which is coming, I can only assume.
I think they've hit bottom. I think this might be.
No, they can go lower than
They can, absolutely they can. But I think they could potentially have, I'm not going to say good things, but they could have slightly better things.
Well, we should talk about what happened, right? Which is that they fired the CEO, and that the company that was Fairfax
was going to invest in them.
Was going to buy them.
Yeah.
And now they're not.
Decided not to. But I think, remember we talked about this before, that no one really took that offer seriously.
Yeah.
That, like, Fairfax didn't have the money, and
didn't know anything about getting into the smartphone game.
Well, and they were just, they're basically a hedge fund.
Yeah.
I mean, they just like buy up like private equity. They invest in things, but they don't really have operational experience. And it seemed like they were doing this to kind of set like a minimum price for price per share for the company, so that like at least somebody else would come in and maybe try to do something better. But that obviously totally backfired. And what even makes it like adds insult to injury is that now BlackBerry owes them money.
Yeah, I mean the fact that this hedge fund wouldn't invest money and it couldn't have boded well for the stock price of the company. I'm a little surprised that Torsten stayed around for as long as he did. What's it been, a year now?
18 months maybe?
Yeah, I think it's been over
a year and a half, something like that. I mean, granted, something actually happened during his stay at the company. I mean, they did launch a major new operating system, some new handsets,
3 phones running that operating system.
Yeah. So things have happened, and certainly he can't be blamed for any of the ongoing faults of the company at this point.
Well, I mean,
he inherited a really bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are things. I mean, there are. I think that there are things that he could have done. I think that they would just have been very unpopular things. Like he could have said, "Guess what? We're getting out of the handset business. We're going to focus on being a services business, infrastructure business, or we're going to switch to Android." Or I mean, there are things that he could have done.
Yeah.
That might have.
You think switching to Android would have?
I think it's too late now, and I think it was probably too late when he came in. But I think that if, say, 3 years ago, they had said, we're going to switch to Android, or we're going to add Android.
But I think anything that he could have done, again, say for like completely scrapping the company and burning it down and shifting gears.
No, but I think that they still have a great services business and infrastructure business. It would have been, I think that I mean, let's say that like 3 years ago, maybe not him, but like the co-CEOs, they had said, we're going to add Android. And we're going to try to maybe not completely abandon, BlackBerry, was it the BlackBerry 7?
7, yeah, 7.
Maybe, but they scrapped 10 and say we're going to develop the best, secure, manageable, infrastructure for handsets for Android and for iOS too, maybe. But we'll sell the best Android handsets and we'll have the best keyboards, which I think there's still a demand for. And I think that that's something that they could have built a solid. A reasonably solid business on.
Again, but I don't think that anything that he could have done, short of really switching tack for the company, could have happened in the last year.
No, I'm not saying it might have been too late by the time he got there, but I'm just saying like in terms of what Android, in terms of what BlackBerry might have done in terms of switching to Android at some point, I think that could have happened.
Well, I mean, what I will say, and this is why I'm maybe for once in the past year being somewhat bullish about BlackBerry's future, is that I think that they've got a good chance of improving under the interim CEO right now.
But to do what? I mean, I guess it's the handset business is dead, because like why would if you're a corporate customer, you're not gonna.
I don't think he's gonna. I mean, I think it's way too late to turn anything around right now. Yeah. But I think that at the very least they could keep the company going. And we've been making this point for a while. I certainly there's not as much of a place for enterprise-only handsets. I think it does still exist somewhat.
It's tougher, but that's why you have to maybe build like the infrastructure for helping companies manage.
Yeah, and he's
You know,
and certainly
device.
he's got a background in that. He's got a background in turning companies around. I mean, Torsten, as nice of a guy as he seemed to be, he really he was a company man. I mean, he didn't really come in with any big ideas. So, yeah, maybe.
Well, I think that at this point they need, I mean, this idea that someone is going to invest $1 billion. I mean, they're trying to raise like $1 billion with but it's a convertible note, which is a very odd. I mean, it's not that unusual, but it does say that there's a lot of skepticism about the value of the company at this point.
Yeah,
that's a financial instrument that you use when, you know, when the investors really, and the investors in the company can't agree on what the company's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at least from a market standpoint, people see any change as being a positive at this point, and certainly, you know, a huge change in management. He's made no bones. This is John Chen. Is a name. He was at Sybase, which is kind of an enterprise company, and apparently he was really the guy who came in and turned things around. He's known as being kind of a no nonsense person when it comes to things like that. He's definitely said he's coming in. He's gonna shake things up a bit. Obviously, BlackBerry needs that right now. I mean, they've been shedding people, but it seems like most of the people they've been shedding have really been kind of lower end folks, and what really needs to happen is there needs to be a big change in management right now. He came out and said that he was planning on maintaining the company's place as a handset manufacturer. I think he had to say that.
Did he?
I think so.
I think that
as the interim CEO, I don't think he could have come in and said that, hey, we're just going to completely shut down the handset division.
He can't say that, because if he said that today, then that means that their cash flow disappears. So even if he was disingenuous and was lying, or worst case lying about that, and said, we're really going to shut it down, it would still be a bad idea to say that now, because then all that cash flow disappears. Better to.
Is it in BlackBerry's best interest to get rid of handsets entirely? I mean, obviously they're still making some BlackBerry 10 systems. They're making these kind of like lower end bolts. People are still buying them. I don't think that shutting that down entirely at this point would necessarily be in their favor.
Well, I guess it's like, could they find? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion. I mean, there's kind of three parts of the business, which is like the infrastructure and services business. Mm-hmm. There's the handset business, and then there's the patents. And in theory, you could split all those up and sell them piecemeal. I mean, I know Lenovo was interested in buying BlackBerry, and that didn't go anywhere because the Canadian government would block it.
Yeah.
But I think in theory, you could find a buyer for. I think it'd be hard to find someone to buy all parts of that company, but you could certainly sell them piecemeal.
Yeah, like I'm sure IBM would have interest in their services, and anybody would probably take the patents. I don't know who would want the handset business, but
maybe someone. I mean, maybe some rising OEM in China. Or like Micromax in India, where BlackBerry's still relatively strong in India and the Middle East.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to get it for cheap. But it's a little bit like the situation that Nokia was in, right? Where they sold off their handset business, but they kept their services business, which they thought is the part that was going to have the strongest growth.
I just feel bad talking about BlackBerry at this point.
You feel bad about? I mean,
I
aren't you kind of over that? I mean, aren't you exhausted at this point of feeling?
Well, that's what it is. It's like I just kind of feel like I'm beating a dead horse. Like it's going away. I don't know what else there is to say anymore about them. I'm just kind of like, we're watching the slow and painful death.
There's not a lot to say. I mean, I think we're going to probably see a lot of movement on the company in the next couple of months, really.
Well, I think why I'm so interested in their story, not just as a former BlackBerry user, but just because what it tells us about like the mobile industry in general right now, which is, it seems like if you are a mobile company and you fail to change quickly enough to react to the market and your sales start to decline, that you basically never recover. I mean, we've seen Palm,
the one caveat I would say to that is that you have to keep messing up. I mean, certainly Nokia and BlackBerry are cases of companies that just didn't see the writing on the wall for an extended period of time.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that like it seems like there's this point where if you don't, that you have to like react to a change in the market quickly.
Sure.
Or it's there's a point in which like it doesn't even matter if you try to, like with like Windows Phone, right?
Yeah.
Like Windows Phone, I think people generally think it's pretty good, that the Lumia devices are pretty good, but that Microsoft and by extension Nokia waited way too long to make that change, and that and that there's nothing that no matter that we may be at a point where like it doesn't even matter how good the phone is,
or how much money
you marketing, or how good the OS is, that like you can't make up that difference in time, and it might be 2 years or whatever that you lost.
It's and part of it's just because there's a couple dozen companies just waiting to swoop in. I mean, this is one of the things one of the things we keep saying is I don't want to see BlackBerry go away because it's a shame to see competition drop off, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because BlackBerry, at least as a hardware manufacturer, might go away, but as you said, there's going to be 15 Asian companies that the vast majority of consumers in the U.S. haven't heard of that'll be flooding.
The one that I kind of missed the most, it would be Palm.
Yeah,
because I felt like there was something so promising in WebOS and in the hardware. And the fact that, they made so many mistakes, and which have been well documented. But I feel like there was something really, that's the one that if I had to pick one to sort of be like, oh, like I wish those guys had made it.
Yeah, that's the two things, not to go back on what I just said, but the two things that we're going to be missing out on are another, and potentially another good operating system. That's a big part of it, and a company taking a really a decidedly different approach to things, to really kind of innovating on that end, because as companies are falling away, we're just seeing everybody essentially use the same pieces of hardware. Everybody's kind of circling around the same technologies, and even obviously there are some interesting exceptions to this, but it seems like even most of the smaller companies are kind of just parroting those technologies for the most part.
Yeah. Well, it's because the market's kind of hit maturity in terms of design and commodification of the technology. I'm still kind of interested to see what happens with Sailfish. Kind of not interested at all in Tizen.
Yeah.
But if Ubuntu Mobile hadn't screwed up, there might have been something
Firefox,
interesting
could
Firefox
be
not that,
kind of interesting. I don't
but
know.
it's, I think that it's just that the market has reached sort of a point of maturity, and this is what happens, right? It's you have this sort of, we all knew, you go back 5 years ago, we all knew that the market wasn't going to support 7 different platforms. And when that shaking out happens, and then the innovation shifts to somewhere else, some other new field.
It has reached a point of maturity, but things are moving so fast right now that we expect the next innovation to come along, the next platform to come along, and we're not seeing it right now. And that's kind of the unfortunate things. It seems like it seems like demand for new technology has way outpaced these large companies' abilities to actually innovate into things. That's what we're seeing with Apple right now.
Yeah. But the innovation's happening at the software and services level.
Yeah.
Right? Because and which is kind of where it should. It's like how
from third parties, actually, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that it's interesting to see the companies that create the ecosystem competing with the companies that are offering services in the ecosystem. So it's like, you're competing with Apple and Google if you're creating an app. And it's hard to, in some respects, it's hard to compete with the company that makes the platform, right? But that's something you have to deal with. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of where we were with PCs before the web really took off, where it took the web to make the PC really interesting for the average person.
But I would say that the flip side of that is, it's also harder for the manufacturers when all of these developers are creating the same apps for both platforms.
Well, and that's what ends up making the PC a commodity, right? Is like the PC, what you cared about on a PC was being able to surf the web. And after a certain point, you didn't need a brand new graphics card and twice as much RAM every year to be able to do those things. And that's how the PC ended up where it is right now.
Well, speaking of new phones, how are you liking the 5? You've spent all of about 10 minutes with the new Nexus?
I got it on. I ordered it about an hour after it went on sale, and then I got it on Tuesday evening.
Okay.
And, so I've had it for a couple days. I like it. I mean, the screen is great. It's very light, which I mean, I read the reviews and things like that, but it's still sort of surprising to feel how light it is. I've noticed a little bit of sluggishness in
really?
it. Yeah, which surprised me, and I wonder whether
it's got a Snapdragon 800. Right?
I know. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. You think it's a fault of the new operating system?
I think maybe there's still some things in KitKat that need to be optimized a little bit.
Fair.
So I'm hoping, and I'm seeing actually less of it as I use it more, which is, a little bit not what I was expecting. But but I do see a few like stutters here and there. Which
in specific apps or just?
Sometimes in apps and sometimes in switching from an app to the home screen, things like that.
I've heard people say specifically that Chrome acts up a lot.
Yeah, Chrome
but I
has been
haven't
a little
seen
bit.
too many complaints about anything else. But I mean, Chrome's always kind of been a little.
Yeah, it's not bad, and like the things that the enhancements they made visually in the UI and things like that in KitKat are really nice.
Are there any features that have really changed the way you use the phone at all?
Having Google Now be one swipe over is nice because I use Google Now all the time, there are a few things that I miss actually from the Moto X, surprisingly, which is the active notifications. That's the one thing which I hope that Google bakes in. I want them to like steal that from Motorola and bake it into KitKat or whatever comes next. But it's definitely one of those things where, despite the Moto X being kind of like an inferior phone on so many levels, like the screen is worse, the camera's worse, the battery life,
processor power.
Yeah,
it's
like
just
the battery life has not been especially great for me. There's something about like the design is very comfortable, but also like the active notifications make it so easy to be able to like just without having to like pick up the phone and switch it on to see whether I have a notification or alert.
So you're not buying a Pebble?
Actually, I was thinking about it with the new update. I guess we weren't going to talk about that today, but with the new update,
sure.
It certainly seems like it's more. The Pebble's more useful than it was before. So I've thought about it. I'm not sure I can go back to wearing a watch. So you guys don't wear watches?
I haven't since I bought a phone.
Very occasionally, but
you got that's just a regular watch, right?
It's the new one, the new fuel band.
That's not like a thing.
Didn't you just look at that?
No, I had the Fitbit.
The Fitbit, okay.
The Force, which is more or less.
I'm mixing up my
your
my
wristborne.
How do you like the Force? Are you a Fitbit user before, or?
I reviewed the Flex and I used that for a while.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked it a lot. Outside of the sleep tracking, which I just stopped paying attention to completely.
Sucks.
It's very bad. Well, the thing with the Flex was more than it's just not terribly accurate. You had to tap it 5 times to turn it off in the morning when the alarm went off, which is
why
really
5 times?
Is that like a snooze feature?
Well, that's just the control. It was all accelerometer, so you tapped it to control it.
I get that. That gets you up, right?
Yeah, but
if
5
you just had
times,
to do it one time.
5 times was to
sleep.
turn it off, and when you're like bleary-eyed first thing in the morning and there's this thing vibrating on your arm, it's really difficult to do. And like, just
you
find it hard to tap your wrist 5 times?
Well, it wouldn't. You'd hit it 5 times, it would just keep going. And you'd hit it 5 times.
He's usually tied up in the morning.
That's sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally. Depending on the
how accurate is the step counting?
It's reasonably accurate. I think it's a little bit better on the Force than it was on the Flex.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them are perfect. You're always going to have it, but it was pretty close when like I'd count and see what the Flex counted.
Because I wear the Fitbit, the one.
Yeah.
And I've actually had a Fitbit since the first one. I have about 4 years ago. I got it. And I found that I had the Jawbone Up, but the Up was not as accurate. I think maybe it's something about the difference between the wrist versus the waist. But I found that the Fitbit one was much more accurate than a wrist-based one.
People said the Flex wasn't particularly accurate, and I didn't think the Up was either. But I found the Force in general to be much more accurate than the
You're
Flex.
not wearing one on your person right now.
No, I actually took it off and left it upstairs. It's in my bag.
But you do wear it.
I've been wearing the Force, yes.
I mean, because you might as well just move over to a smartwatch at that point, right? If it's got basically the same functionality in a lot of cases.
I mean, it's a lot more limited than a smartwatch. The only notifications you can get on the Force are...
Well, that's what I'm saying. You might as well just get a Pebble, right? If you're going to be walking around with one of those things on.
Yeah, I mean, how much is the Pebble at this point?
150.
150?
150.
150 isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's actually only $20 more.
I mean,
than the Force.
those things are now kind of seeming like placeholders to me. You know, like an interim piece of technology because they're very limited. You might as well. Yeah. It's one of those things where you might as well get a face on it. You might as well get notifications on it. You might as well be able to check email.
Well, maybe I'll wait for the Google Now Watch. So
yeah, that's moderately interesting to me as a guy who's in general not a smartwatch like. Excited about that particular product category.
I was wondering whether they could do a Google Now Watch with an e-ink display. Whether like Google Now is sort of static enough and basic enough that you
why you couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that would solve the battery life. I mean, it would solve the battery life, but it would help the battery life.
Android ported onto like a lot of those e-ink devices. I don't see why you couldn't just run Now on it.
Because that was the thing where I was sort of trying to figure out like how could they make this work where it wouldn't just kill the battery? Because Google Now can be pretty.
Yeah,
I imagine it'd be pretty power intensive.
Ink is definitely a little bit limiting, but Samsung has showed us that it's a problem.
It might be a good limit to have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly. I mean, maybe this is a case. Maybe it's like glass. I mean, maybe this is a case of the limitations of the platform actually being a positive.
Yeah.
Because this is, again, it's going to be like a supplementary device. It's something you've got on you at all times. You don't want it just kind of going off at random.
So maybe I got to buy a Pebble now.
I think you do. I think that's. There's going to probably be some Pebbles floating around this weekend, right? We've got the CEO.
I'm sure there
Pebbles
will be.
Going to be. So.
I will talk to him.
Yeah, we can get one on the side.
I know.
Have you? So you got a chance actually. I reviewed that over the weekend. This is the new HDX. I'm gonna stand up. I just did the battery rundown test, so I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to turn this thing on. This Origami Case has always kind of been one of my favorite things about these devices. I really liked it for the 7-inch, which I reviewed a while ago. It's just kind of a really super nice magnetic case, that folds over. You've got a portrait and landscape stand on this thing, but one additional feature that you've got on the 8.9 that you don't have on the 7, because this is actually the first Fire device with a rear-facing camera, this is a little tricky to get right the first time, but especially at that angle. I'm going to turn around for this. Well, didn't work as planned.
No.
I'll take it out of the lock screen might help. There we go. All right.
This is the best
This
tech
is
demo
not.
ever.
This is not working.
No, it's not.
This is
What
not.
are you trying to do?
Something up there. You go. All right.
You slide it up and it launches the
slide
camera.
it up 5 times. Tap it 5 times.
Tap it 25 times. And
it's just a nice
launches.
little kind of addition to what is a really nice case on this thing. It's got this 8-megapixel rear-facing
How much does the
camera.
case cost?
The case that's a good question. It's not. It's an Amazon case, so it's not cheap. I'm gonna make Matt look it up. I feel like you should be our I want to say 60
Yeah,
bucks.
if you're in the room, you have to do this stuff.
Yeah, I want to say $60. Could be off on that.
Chop.
I'm always amazed when like a case, when cases start to cost more than the device.
Well, that's honestly
because you could buy
for the Kindle e-readers. I think the cases are pretty much the same price.
You're doubling the price if you buy a case.
Yeah, exactly.
$70?
70.
Wow. Because you could buy like a refurbished Kindle Fire for $70.
Well, I mean that brings up another point. Which is the fact that
I'll hook you guys up. I know a guy.
$380 to start.
Yeah.
Which is for a Kindle it's up there.
So the thing that struck me was the screen is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean the screen is really, really, really nice. Do we know the pixel density on?
I want to say like 2600 by 18. It's something like that. I think it's like 339 ppi. It's
Matt, work your magic.
Matt, come on.
really nice. It's definitely nice. It's
otherwise you can't get to expand this weekend.
339 for the PPI. And
that's
the
amazing.
Is 26
2560 by 1600.
by 1600.
That's
2560
and an
by
8.9
1600.
inch screen.
Yeah, it's everything about this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really nice piece. It won't take the case
And
off.
it's light,
really
yeah.
light. It's super thin. They moved the speakers up, which I can't believe the last generation had speakers exactly where you stuck your hands. pretty much everything about it from a hardware perspective is great. You know, it definitely justifies a $380 price point, which again is expensive for a Kindle. One major setback on this thing, the software. It's running FireOS, and I want to caveat that by saying, you know, I think they've done some really nice things to FireOS here. It keeps, like the devices themselves, it keeps getting better every single year. There's some nice features, and they've also just improved functionality on it. So when the first Fire came out 2 years ago, the entire operating system was basically just centered around that content river. You could swipe up now. There's you've got a full screen of icons. It's a little bit more like Android in that respect.
Tablet.
Yeah.
As opposed to a color e-reader, basically.
Yeah, swipe to the side, and you can open up all the apps that it's currently running. It's a pretty nice operating system. It's definitely going to do pretty much everything that a casual user is going to need out of a tablet.
Yeah.
But for our core readership, the fact that there's no Google Play access on this thing is always going to be a deal breaker for people. I mean, you can root it. You can.
Can you actually?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure it's rooted.
You'll be able to in a week or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll be able to root it. I mean,
because if I remember correctly, people had a lot of trouble with the original Kindle Fire getting that. The Nook tablets always proved to be much easier to.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think that was probably on purpose.
Yeah. No.
I mean, ultimately, Barnes & Noble just stopped the pretenses and got rid of their app store and opened it up to Google
They were just
Play.
like, here.
But as long as Amazon is making tablets, I mean, they're going to have to run their own operating system.
Sure.
Right? That's their business plan is to make everything up on the back end through the content. But I just, the one thing that I will say about this device is, again, as we know, their business model is to sell things at cost to just it's kind of basically like a long tail plan of making things up through all the apps and movies and everything that's bought through them. But with that in mind, $380 doesn't seem incredibly cheap for an 8.9.
Well, that's the thing that I actually think, if you kind of survey the landscape for tablet pricing or whatever, it's certainly a good price. I mean, it's a mid-tier price. The Retina iPad Mini is $20 more.
Take Apple out of the equation, and it's a mid-tier.
I know, but I'm saying, that is still sort of the anchor for a lot of people. But I think that if you're someone that's sort of a casual tablet user, it's going to be. I think the average casual tablet user is going to sort of just be. They're probably going to be happy with the 7-inch device, and which costs less. Which costs a lot less.
Which is like $150 less, and that to me, is a really good price point. I think it's like $220 to start, and that if you're buying a holiday gift, if you're buying somebody their first tablet, if you're buying yourself your first tablet, that to me is a really good price point. $380 is probably a little hard to justify for a lot of people.
Yeah. Unless you really just need that bigger screen. If you know like you're going to be reading a lot of comics, because.
But I think it's like
that's
$380. I think for a lot of people, like the difference between 7-inch and 8.9, it doesn't seem like it's like worth spending. I think like we kind of understand. Okay, we're talking about like it's much higher resolution, like it's it's bigger.
The 7-inch has really great resolution.
But I think I think that I think the thing about tablets is it's not like a spec war in the same way that it was with PCs or whatever. It's not like it's not like you're gonna get twice as much value or whatever
no, but it's always but that's always the price gap. The screen size is always the price gap on a product.
No, totally. I'm just saying it's like I think that it's
but I mean, and I will say, like, having spent a lot of time with the 7-inch and the 9-inch, I mean, I could go back and forth between them for the most part. I mean, especially this has a feature on it called second screen, which is a way of just basically like flinging the content that you're watching onto the TV. If you've got a Samsung Smart TV, if you've got a PlayStation 3 or 4, they're going to expand it out in the near future. But it's actually pulling all that information down off the cloud, so it'll pick up where you left off. You don't have to worry about the processing power on this device. So theoretically, I mean, if Amazon gets their way, you're actually doing all of that movie and TV watching on a TV set anyway.
Well, that's why they got to get their box out, right?
Yeah,
delayed.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
At this point, if it's not announced in the next week or two. There's no way. There's no way.
It's not. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's some small chance they're going to squeeze it out right before the holidays.
Yeah.
If the price is good, then they'll still meet the holiday demand.
I think I think Chromecast kind of messed with their game a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they were like, okay, we'll sell it for $50. That's a steal.
And they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Free still seems like an option. I think they could still do something for free.
You think so?
I do.
I think, for...
Or free with a Prime subscription, maybe.
I don't think they'll do it.
No?
I think maybe they'll do it for $20 with the Prime subscription.
Yeah. I mean, how much?
It's really only going to work with a Prime subscription, so they'll sell it for $20, right?
How much is the hardware going to cost for them to actually? Like, how much is the Chromecast hardware? Right.
I don't think they're making any money on it. I think they're probably selling it at cost. So
it probably costs them like $25 or whatever.
So they'll sell it at cost, be $25.
They could sell it. I mean, they could sell it for $25 or $30. Honestly, if they sold it for $30,
they've got to undercut.
They undercut the Chromecast by $5, and they're heroes. Right?
But they're not throwing in the Netflix subscription initially. They don't have to worry about that pricing.
No. But they'll have the Prime subscription, and it's going to be limited. You're not going to be able to get all the stuff you get with Chromecast. But I think,
of course not. But that's why they can sell it for cheaper. Right, because you're locked into that stuff specifically.
Yeah.
I think they could get away with doing it for free. Maybe that's a shift in game plan because of the Chromecast, but they've got to bring that out soon. I mean, the holidays are going to be really important for a device like that, especially if they're trying to lock people into Prime.
Well, the thing I can't figure out is unless they decided to push it back so they could try to figure out how to make it cheaper. It's not that. If you want to buy an Android-powered HDMI stick that can do video, there's like 1 billion OEMs in China that make these now.
Yeah, but they're not targeting the people who are going to go online.
No, but what I'm saying is like, what could possibly be the?
Oh, you mean for? I'm sorry, yeah.
It's not like it's not. I'm just saying it's not like there's some big like technological thing they need to figure out to make it work.
Yeah, unless there's some trickery. Unless they're really trying to set themselves apart from Chromecast, which now would be the time to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk really quickly about the NUC glow light before we move on. You haven't had it. You were still using the first generation NUC, right?
Not the first gen, the second.
Okay. Well, the first Simple Touch.
Did you switch to the Kobo? We were talking about that.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah.
I'd say the pocket integration on the Aura is really nice.
It's great.
It's going to be what makes me switch.
What are your favorite things about the NUC? As opposed to other e-readers.
I enjoy being able to sideload content on it because I have a backlog of downloaded books.
Like EPUB?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the design of it a lot. Just more so than I like the Kindle. I like the combination of touch and buttons. I like the way it feels in my hand.
So the concave back, the buttons, both gone.
Damn.
That's what I was getting. That's my long way of.
That was you just got set up.
My long way of. Yeah. Thank you.
So everything I love about the NUC
is gone.
The form factor is similar.
Let it go, Terrence.
Yeah.
It's done.
Here I come, Kobo.
I should have brought it in because it's a really light device. It's shockingly light. It's lighter, not much lighter. I think it's like
it would blow away in a breeze kind of light.
Potentially. It's basically the same weight as like one of those mass market paperback pocket books that you would get in the 80s. It's super light. The lighting is much better. It's still not as good as the Kobo or the Paperwhite. Took them a year and a half to come out with that. They didn't quite hit it.
Yeah.
It's a nice device, but it's kind of crazy that it took them this long because they were the first major. Well,
they were first out of the gate with it,
but the first one to do front lighting, I think, reasonably well. They did that about a year and a half ago. Kindle and Kobo came along, blew them away. There's already been second generation of both of those devices. Paperwhite front lighting got even better. It's decent, but it kind of pains me to say this because I actually really like NUC devices, but the tablet arm has gone away. They're not going to actually be manufacturing those devices
they're just
anymore.
going to be rebranding.
Yeah, this is.
Cheap OEM devices.
119 is a good price point, certainly. That's the same price point as the Paperwhite, but without all the ads on it. They got rid. Yeah, I forgot they got rid of the micro SD slot too. So it's going to make side loading a little bit more difficult on this device.
Yeah.
It just seems like it just seems like they kind of stripped all of the things that we, not necessarily the things that we liked about it, but the things that set it apart from the competition, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of the thing. Like, the being able to sideload content is something specifically I enjoyed. Most people are never going to use that.
No, but the physical page turn buttons are great.
Yeah,
I really
physical
like
page
those
turns.
on the reader. I mean, I'm okay with my Paperwhite. I can do touch, but it was a nice option to have. It just felt a little bit better in your hand.
Well, yeah, the thing with that is I do a lot of reading on the subway while standing, and then
I've gotten really good at
being
the one thumb pressing it while I'm standing on the subway. So yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a little too late from Barnes & Noble. Chevrolet, on the other hand, I would like to mention that they are the sponsor of this particular Engadget podcast, dedicated to pushing the boundaries of automotive innovation to provide cleaner, more efficient, and better connected vehicles to enhance your driving experience. Chevrolet, find new roads. Microsoft, find new CEOs. I mean, Elop has kind of been that's been on everybody's short list for a while, right? I mean, he's been a Microsoft insider for a while now. I mean, a lot of people think that he's been kind of a mole with the time that he spent at Nokia. I mean, that's both them going over to Windows Phone entirely and them getting bought up by Microsoft were both done on his watch.
Yeah, I don't really buy the conspiracy theory, but I mean. And
conspiracy theories are so much fun.
No, they are fun.
I mean, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory to say, not that Microsoft implanted him.
No, that's the conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But that, this is maybe something that he's been eyeing all along.
Well, I mean, I mean, if I were Elop, if I were the CEO of Nokia, I mean, it certainly would not be a lot of glory in, having your company bought.
Unless you're eyeing, CEO job.
Well, but how could
company.
he know? I mean, that seems like at the time, when he took that job, Ballmer was not going anywhere for a long time. He was not going to step down until 2017 or whatever.
Yeah, but the Microsoft acquisition is still relatively fresh at this point.
Sure, but what I'm saying is that maybe that's one reason why he decided to do the sale, but I don't think that he went to Nokia thinking I'm going to get these guys bought by Microsoft and then become CEO.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly a partnership with Microsoft might have been something that made sense to him early on. Moving over to Windows Phone.
I'm sure that was something that occurred to the Nokia board, that they had to weigh their options in terms of deciding to stick with I can't remember the name. Was it Migo at the time? I'm trying to remember what they were calling it.
It eventually became Migo. It had 3 other names.
Yeah, they keep changing the name. But whether they're going to stay with that or whether they were going to switch to something else, and I think when you pick the Microsoft guy to run the company, that's something that you have to sort of feel like he's probably going to be inclined towards that as the option. It's not like it was a secret, I think, but. I feel like he would probably. I'm still not convinced that he's really a leading. I mean, I know he's one of the 5, but I don't feel like he's at the head of that pack.
Well, who? So Mullally, which I don't know. He seemed kind of like a dark horse to me, but obviously he's got the Microsoft connection
And the Boeing, but he has the Boeing experience. Helping turn around companies.
And he's turned
Ford.
he's turned around Ford, but he's also been kind of a leading force in that partnership with Microsoft, and he's been the one kind of pushing them towards a more of a technology focus in his time there. But he doesn't necessarily have that. I don't know if running Ford and Boeing necessarily translate into being able to run a huge software company.
Not necessarily. But I could see why he would be very appealing to the board.
So if Elop isn't the front runner, who do you see ahead of him?
I don't know who else is on that list.
Tony Bates
from
Skype, and Satya Nadella, who's their enterprise head.
I mean, I guess I could see them going with an inside hire. I don't think that's necessarily going to be very popular with the shareholders. Certainly, they definitely need to bring somebody in to kind of shake things up. Skype. I don't know if running Skype quite gives you the credentials to run a company the size of Microsoft. I think Elop. I don't know. I think Elop is probably at the top of my list of possibilities right now.
I just don't feel like he would do a great job.
I'm not saying he necessarily would, but
Yeah.
he seems like
I don't have
pretty
anything against him or
he
anything
seems like
if
a
he's
pretty
watching,
safe
but-
bet from their standpoint.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like any of the others have like clear advantages over him.
I mean,
necessarily.
although as Peter said, Mullally does have experience turning two big alien companies around, which will help, and obviously Microsoft likes him right now. So, I he hadn't occurred to me before, but it would make sense. It is a relatively safe hire for them. I don't know if he's necessarily expressed interest in the position, at least publicly.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't necessarily do it publicly.
For Ford, yeah.
But I thought maybe I was it Scott Forstall, the skeuomorphism guy from Apple.
Yeah.
I thought he would actually be an interesting, pick. Obviously, he's probably pissed off at Apple right now, but he has experience, on the software hardware side. Of
The
things.
shareholders would love that. Somebody picking up somebody from Apple.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be that bad of a.
No,
I
I
mean,
think you're right. I think that would be a very popular choice. Like I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I think it would be very popular with the
Are
shareholders.
you sure you're not being sarcastic?
I can't tell anymore.
I mean, I think he would be it would be an unusual pick.
Yeah.
But I think that he, and there's certainly things that he did at Apple that were not very popular, right? But I think that I wouldn't underestimate the things that he achieved with iPhone either. And so, and clearly he can run like a big operation.
He as far as unexpected people and people who would probably shake things up, he's a relatively safe pick for that.
Yeah.
Good job, Peter. I like that. I like that answer.
I don't think he was listening to me, but I think it's really tough because running a company of that size is extremely difficult.
With so many different products. I mean, that's the big thing, right? Is what do you focus your resources on?
Well, and I think it's also like a question is like, do you want someone with like product vision in that role, or do you want someone who has operational expertise and vision, so to speak? I mean, that's why I think Mullally is appealing, because he might not have a product vision, but at least he can sort of sit there and say, well, let's enable.
Do you want a Steve Jobs or a Tim Cook? Is that the?
Well, or somebody who just has experience running big messy companies, which is what Microsoft is now. It's a big messy company.
Yeah, I think product vision at this point. I think they've got a lot of. I'm not going to say bureaucrats, but I think they've got a lot of people there who are pretty capable of running the day-to-day operations of things. So I think you need somebody in the position that Microsoft is in right now, in probably just about every category save for gaming. I think they need somebody who needs to just kind of completely rethink the way they do those products.
Yeah.
And even potentially in gaming, we'll see.
But yeah, gaming is one space that I think at least for the next couple of years is looking pretty healthy.
Yeah. But part of figuring out their product problems is figuring out how they're structured as a business, because one of the reasons why Microsoft does things the way it does is because the business units are structured in a certain way. And I know they have the one Microsoft strategy now, which is supposed to reorganize the business to make them better at doing this sort of hardware and service, be a devices and services company. But managing that transition is not done. It's going to be a few years before it's done, and having someone who could oversee that kind of transition, is really important. And that's why it's hard to find someone who can embody both of those things. Yeah. Someone who can embody that kind of corporate reorganization, but also drive a vision for what Microsoft needs to be doing from a product and services standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that they need somebody in both of those positions. I guess the question ultimately is just who you call the CEO, right?
You could have a co-CEO.
Yeah, that works out well for BlackBerry.
Well, it's tough, but I think
you hear that. I mean, co-CEO just sound. Was it Oracle that had co-CEOs at one point? Not Oracle. Was it HP?
I have no idea.
I don't think
I've never heard of anybody other than BlackBerry.
I think it might have been HP. I could be, but I mean, yeah, you don't hear very many successful cases of co-CEOs. You need somebody who's really
it's very difficult.
Who's running things, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about restructuring, though. I mean, I keep thinking about Google, and the reason why Google has been such a success is because they have all of these. I mean, they've got a lot of different products, but they all play really nicely together.
They didn't used to, though.
Yeah.
That was Larry Page that came in and fixed that.
They realized at some point that it was getting messy and cumbersome, and they needed to restructure and make everything play nice. And
So and Microsoft's been trying to do that,
but they
piecemeal.
were so late to the game.
Yeah.
That Google realized it a lot earlier on in their development than Microsoft did.
Well, yeah,
And Microsoft in general is a much more sprawling company.
Yeah, and they're a much older company, and the
Yeah.
necessity to do that is, you know, is kind of a product of the internet age, at least for like product suites like that. Google Glass, you said you're sick of hearing about Google Glass, Peter.
You know, until they have, like, they're announcing the consumer version and the price. More SDK news is like, I'm like, what, you know.
I think the SDK, I mean, it's, you know, I feel like we've yet to see if this is actually going to be a consumer product.
Well, I mean, they are going to do a consumer.
It might fail, but they're going to do a consumer release for sure.
Yeah, this just really feels like them. I mean, this is kind of like their moonshot device right now. I mean, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that we're not going to see a consumer product come out of this, but I think there's a decent chance that it's going to look very different than what we're seeing right now.
But that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
You know.
So how long until we're walking around with a Google Watch, Google Glass, and a Nexus
Google
phone? And,
Argyle.
Yeah. I have Google shirt, just what monitors my vital signs at all times.
I get the feeling
tells
that
my family when I'm dead. Like if I get hit by a bus, it sends them an email automatically.
That's what Facebook's for.
No, it would be a Google Plus message.
Yeah. But then no one will know I've
exactly,
died.
yeah.
This definitely seems like one of those things. Like as we're moving more and more towards wearables, that like there's going to be a period of a few years where like everything we have on us is going to be an individual wearable, and then it's just going to move towards kind of a more unified solution.
And then we're just going to go back to a phone.
But there was a company, go back about 10 years, there was a company called IXI, I think, IXI, and they tried to coin the personal area network.
Yes.
And this is the idea that you would have like one thing that would be like a you know, one of those EVDO modem, the what are they called? MiFi.
The MiFi, yeah.
God, this is what happens when you get as little sleep as I do.
We're transitioning out of the show.
So you'd have like kind of like a MiFi type device, and then that would connect over Bluetooth to like you'd have like your watch, and then you have like a phone, and then you'd have like a headset type, you know, like
MiFi is like your heart. It's like your tech heart.
It would be like the hub, and I think some of there might even be some of the processing would be offloaded to that device. But it was just like way too early, and the company like totally flamed out and went nowhere. But it's a really interesting concept, and you could certainly see, you know, the unbundle. I mean, that might be like, you know, where this ends up is that the smartphone becomes sort of unbundled, and it's like you have like one thing that has like your, you know, radio and maybe like processing, and then you have like a, you know, like something that has fast enough, like a Bluetooth 5.0 with enough bandwidth that you could, you know, have like a super lightweight device that's just a screen, like a dumb terminal kind of thing.
It definitely, I mean, it's definitely, you have to take a step back every once in a while and think about, you know, it's kind of weird that we're still in the phone paradigm, you know, that's still
dominates.
The device that's, you know, these devices that we're not really using, very, I don't know, I very seldomly actually use mine as a phone, and that's still,
I can't remember the last
that's still
phone
what
call I
defines
placed.
these products at this point.
Yeah.
But we will need some kind of device hub for the next several years at least.
Well, I mean, I think it's just that eventually the technology maybe gets there, and then, and I think that, you know, and that's where it starts to get maybe interesting again. Is we start to get excited about mobile again, because once you start to uncouple things, then you can start to, you know, play with form factors and devices and, you know, new things that come out.
So 10 years tops, we'll be excited about technology again.
Yeah, let's stop doing the podcast for 10 years.
That sounds good. Let's meet back here in 10 years,
10
guys.
years.
We'll have a reunion of the show. Yeah, it does. You know, I was thinking about the Nexus 5 earlier, and I was like, yeah, it seems nice.
Yeah.
No, it's nice.
That's the extent of my enthusiasm for a lot of these devices now.
I mean, you could say that about it pretty much. I mean, that's how I felt about, like, you kind of feel about most things right now. It's like, you know, new iPad, it's nice, it's great. You know, it's. I think that it's just that, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, and it's not bad that they're, you know, not blowing out the doors every time a new one comes out. I mean, that's just.
There's just not much to get super excited about.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's just who's going to be the next company to do that. I mean, it's probably, is it going to be Apple?
Probably.
You know,
not.
I mean, it's going to be something. You know, I mean, it's going to be something out of left field. And that's what's exciting. You know.
Is a smartwatch far enough out of left field?
No,
I don't think so.
Just because the groundwork's already been laid there, or just it's not a paradigm shifting device?
both.
Yeah. I think it'll be a nice thing. I think it'll be something that a lot of people use and like, but I don't think it's going to be something that changes the way we live quite as much as the smartphone did.
I don't know if the tab was necessarily that device either, though. I mean, if we're really going that far,
It wasn't, but
I think the tablet is a pretty big deal in that it's supplanting a lot of PC usage and a lot of PC purchases. So I think that in that respect, it's changing the way that we do computing. And
but this is like getting back to the original point. Then I mean, ultimately the problem with the smartwatch in terms of actually changing things is that it's still it's a surrogate device. I mean, it's still something that needs to be tethered to.
It's a companion. It's ultimately it's going to work best as a companion device.
Yeah.
It has to.
Why do I feel like we just ended on like a kind of a downer?
No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
It does feel relatively like, it's just going to be the
I
future
can't get
of
excited about
technology.
technology anymore.
I'm
excited about
apathetic
the
about
future of
everything.
technology that we're going to see. You're doing a future panel, right?
Yes.
You're talking to Joy Ito
Yes.
of MIT.
Yep.
And Annalie Newitz
Maybe.
of Iodine.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a fun one. What are your projections for the future panel?
It's going to be chaotic and completely disorganized.
Just like the future.
Yeah. I'm hoping at some point somebody throws a chair, just because that's how I judge the success of any, panel style talk.
Sure.
Is we need to reach like Ricky Lake levels and chair throwing.
By that measure, this has been a terrible podcast. There's a whole pile of chairs. Matt Smith is over there. I'll throw that Angry Bird into the control board. Good job, Terrence.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Why did you catch it?
Thanks, everyone, except for Matt Smith, for joining us. And thanks today to our podcast sponsor and expand sponsor, Chevrolet.
Who?
Chevrolet.
Oh, okay.
You can find them at Chevrolet.com, Terrence. Find new roads. Thank you. Thanks, Peter Rojas on Twitter. Thank you, Terrence O'Brien on Twitter. Thank you, Matt Smith. That Matt Smith.
You're welcome.
Matt Smith on Twitter. What's your handle, John? Is it just John Turry?
Nope.
At twitter.org. Thank you for joining us.
The other Twitter.
Fun. Check it out. We'll see you next week. .twitter.com. I was talking to the camera, Matt.